The city's financial situation is not good. In 2012, the federal government granted the city €300 million to help it reduce its enormous debt. The city's budget shows significant interest costs, which are approximately 15% of the total cost. Even with the grant, the city had a €704 million deficit, which was approximately 18% of its total income. Its cost-to-revenue ratio was 1.18. In regard to its prospects, we know the federal government, subject to a detailed plan, has agreed to grant €300 million per year to the city if it manages to reduce its deficit in the next 5 years. This is a great opportunity for the city to help it address its deficit budget in a measured and manageable way. In regard to a statement to secure the grant, the city needs financial support to manage its high deficit if it's going to be sustainable in the long term. Deficits of the magnitude the city currently has cannot be addressed in 1 year. A multi-year grant program, such as the one offered by the federal government, is critical for the city to ensure it can transition gradually into a more sustainable and prosperous future. The multi-year nature of the grant program has a number of benefits. It will allow the city to increase its revenue more gradually, thus managing the financial impact on its citizens and the political risk of increasing tax-related income too steeply, too fast. The grant will support revenue while the city addresses its own revenue streams. In parallel, a multi-year grant allows the city to better plan and implement cost reduction strategies. Overall, it will allow the city to deliver a balanced budget by 2020. The following approach allows the city to transition gradually to the balanced budget and improve its financial performance, increasing revenue but mindful of the impact this will have on citizens and reducing costs through improving efficiencies. In regard to revenue, the city will firstly increase tax-related income by approximately 6.5% per year, or approximately 32% over 5 years. This is a steep increase, but recognises the serious situation the city is in. It will also allow the city to reduce taxes if a balanced budget can be achieved earlier. The city will ensure this tax-related income does not target the socially or economically disadvantaged. Increases such as taxes and fees levied on citizens, which are non-transactional exchanges, will be politically sensitive and need to be managed well. It is important that there is a clear messaging around what the city is trying to achieve, and that if the significant debt is not addressed, there will be further impacts on citizens. Secondly, I plan on increased specific revenue from operations. The city will aim for an increase in the operations revenue of 2.7% increase per year, or 13.5% increase over 5 years. This could include raising transactional fees and charges such as parking fees and fines. Total revenue is projected to increase by approximately 5.3% annually. In regard to costs, the city will maintain social benefit related costs, which are a critical component of the public value the city provides. Secondly, reduce personnel costs by 5% per annum for 3 years, and then fixed costs from 2015 until the budget is balanced. This can be misleading, however, as fixing staffing costs is, in effect, still reducing staffing as salary increases over time. Lastly, reduce operations costs by addressing inefficiencies. Operations costs will be reduced by €68 million, or 5.6% over 5 years. This operations cost reduction is greater in real terms, as costs will increase over that time due to CPI increases, which are anticipated to be on average 1%. Total costs will be decreased by €178 million over the 5 years, or approximately 0.8% per annum. In 2017, the cost-revenue ratio is anticipated to be approximately 1. I have attached an income statement for the city. It's evident the city's deficit will reduce, becoming a surplus in 2016, before going back to a deficit once the grant ceases. However, the city will be on track to deliver a balanced budget by 2020. This surplus in 2016 can assist the city in paying down its debt and reducing interest costs in the future, or alternatively, the city can look to reducing pressure on other budget areas or implement capital works, which could provide social benefit. Given the income statement, I think the city has been performing well in regard to tax revenue, which is quite high and therefore has potential scope to increase. In regard to areas that is performing badly, I would suggest its personnel costs are high, potentially implying inefficiencies, and almost double the spending on social benefit. There also appears to be a low return on investments considering the investment revenue to cost ratio is 0.18. If I work for the federal government, I believe the federal government grant is critical. Multi-year grants allow cities to address their deficits in a measured way and help themselves get back to a sustainable, balanced budget situation. This is too difficult to achieve with a single-year grant, particularly for cities with large debts. If cities don't comprehensively address some of the fundamental issues with their budgets, then one-off handouts could just end up being a waste of money. Financially supporting cities to help improve their financial performance also reduces the risk to the federal government. If the cities have to be bailed out, there is a risk of even greater impacts and a greater cost to the federal government in the long run. There is also a potential reputational risk to the federal government if it appears it hasn't been keeping an eye on the cities, therefore managing its own risks. The cities may have to take drastic action which could politically harm the federal government.